Shalom, people of God. I trust that everyone is very well, and we want to bless the Lord this morning. This is John Jue Elias coming to us on 5137, and today we are dealing with the 5 stages of grief, and it is also called the cycle of grief. That is the title of our talk today. Before I read what was established by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler, I would want to read a few scriptures in the book of Job, and then we will relate these scriptures to what we are going to go through. And this cycle of grief was established in 1969 by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler in their book that is entitled Death and Dying. So let's read from the book of Job, chapter 1 and verse 20. I may not read scriptures that have come forward or before then. I urge you to read the book of Job, almost all of it, and you will see how this man of God mourned his loss or grieved his loss. But I would want to read chapter 1 and verse 20 to 22. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped. And he said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. This is after he had lost all his livestock and all his wealth. Job charged God not foolishly. He said he came naked, and naked shall he return when he dies. Then in chapter 2, after he had lost his health, we read in verse 9, Then said his wife unto him, Dost thou retain your integrity? Curse God and die. But Job said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this did Job sin. Job sinned not with his lips. So after he had lost his wealth and health, Job never sinned against God. Though when you read other verses and chapters in his book, he bargained a lot. He had some anger at some point. He had some depression at some point. And then in chapter 42, as we read in one of our discussions, he admitted that he had sinned against God, and he abhorred himself. He repented to God, and God restored his state than double than it was in the beginning. Let's now go into the 5 stages of grief, and the 5 stages is denial and isolation. Then there is anger, there is depression that comes in, there is bargaining, there is acceptance of the loss, and then one gets to a normal life, and that is new normal. Let's now look at denial. Denial is the first of the 5 stages of grief. It helps us to survive the loss. In this stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming. Life makes no sense. We are in a state of shock and denial of the loss that we have incurred. We go numb. We wonder how we can go on. If we can go on, how should we go on? We try to find a way to simply get through each day. Denial and shock help us to cope and make survival possible. Denial helps us to pace our grieving and our feelings of grief in different times. There is a grace in denial. It's a natural way of letting in only as much as we can handle. As you accept the reality of the loss and start to ask yourselves questions, you are unknowingly beginning the healing process. You are becoming stronger, and the denial is the beginning to fade. But as you proceed, all the feelings you are denying begin to surface. So the very first stage is denying that the loss has occurred. You deny that your loved one is gone. You deny that your job is gone. You deny your school calendar is gone. So there is a lot of denial, and this denial can bring isolation. You hide yourself. You don't want to see people. You don't want to talk to individuals because you are in denial. That is the first stage of grief cycle. The next one is anger. Anger is a necessary stage of the healing process. Be willing to feel your anger, even though it seems endless. The more you truly feel it, the more it will begin to dissipate, and the more you will heal. There are many other emotions under the anger, and you will get to them in time. But anger is the emotion we are most used to managing. The truth is that anger has no limits. It can extend not only to your friends. You can give your friends anger. You can pass it to your doctors. You can pass it to your family. You can pass it to yourself and your loved one. You can pass your anger even to your nation. Like this particular time, I believe students are passing maybe their anger maybe to our government, that if they had established the laptop projects in schools, maybe our children now could be learning. So we can extend our anger to so many things and people that are around us. But anger is strength, and it can be an anger, giving temporal structure to the nothingness of loss. At first, grief feels like being lost at sea, no connection to anything. Then you get angry at someone, maybe a person that didn't attend your funeral, or maybe a person who is around you, maybe a person who is different now that your loved one has died. Suddenly you have a structure, your anger toward them. The anger becomes a bridge over the open sea, a connection from you to them. It is something to hold on to, and a connection made from the strength of anger feels better than nothing. We usually know about more about suppressing anger than feeling it. The anger is just another indication of the intensity of your love. So this is stage number 2, and we be angry at situation, we be angry at the loss, we be angry at people that may have seemingly necessitated the loss, so we get angry. Then stage number 3 is bargaining. Before a loss, it seems like you would do anything if your loved one would be spared. You start saying, please God, you bargain. I will never be angry at my wife or at my people again if you would just let her live. Thinking that possibly the one who has passed on can come back to anger. You start saying, if I would get this job, I would do my best. There are a lot of bargaining that goes on. And you see, if we had taken him to the best hospital, maybe he would not have died. We start bargaining. We start blaming ourselves. We start saying, if we had done that, if I had done that, if I had talked to him, if I had dealt with my boss better, maybe I would not have lost the job. So guilt is often bargaining's companion. The if onlys cause us to find fault in ourselves, what we think we could have done differently. We may even bargain with the pain. We would do anything not to feel the pain or the loss that we have incurred. We remain in the past. We try to negotiate our way out of the hurt. People often think of these stages as lasting weeks or months. They forget that the stages are responsive to feelings and can even last for minutes or hours. We flip in and flip out of our anger at different times. We do not enter and leave each individual stage in any linear fashion. We may feel one, then another, and back again to the first one. So we have no order of these cycles, but it is important for us to go through the 5 cycles. The fourth one is depression, where you are depressed. After bargaining, our attention moves squarely into the present. Empty feelings present ourselves, and grief enters our lives on a deeper level, deeper than we ever imagined. This depressive stage feels as though it will last forever. It's important to understand that the depression is not a sign of mental health in this case. It is just because of the process of mourning at the stages of grief or mourning. It is appropriate response to a great loss. Being depressed is normal in this case. We withdraw from life, left in a fog of intense sadness, wondering perhaps if there is any point in going on alone. Why go on? My loved one is gone. My job is gone. My school term is gone. Depression after a loss is too often seen as unnatural, a stage to be fixed, something to snap out of. The first question to ask yourself is whether or not the situation you will in is actually depressing. The loss of a loved one is a very depressing situation. Also a job, also a school. And depression is a normal and appropriate response. To not experience depression after a loss, then that may not be normal. When a loss fully settles in your soul, the realization that you have had the loss get better this time and is not coming back in an understandable, depressing way. If grief is a process of healing, then depression is one of the many necessary stages along the way in the stages of mourning or grieving. The fifth stage is acceptance. Acceptance is often confused with the notion of being all right or okay with what has happened. This is not the case. You accepting it does not mean that you say it's all right what happened. No, that's not what it means. Most people don't even feel okay or all right after the loss of whatever they may have experienced. This stage is about accepting the reality that you have lost something physically and it is gone, and recognizing that this new reality is the permanent reality and acknowledging your permanent reality without that person, without that job, without that class, without that year. We will never like this reality or make it okay, but eventually we accept it. We learn to live with it. It is the new norm with which we must learn to live. We live without the loved ones. We live without that school calendar. We live without that job. We live without that income. The faster we accept that, the better we come out of our grieving mode. And once we come from our grieving mode, then we can be able to begin the new normal. You have lost your normal job. You look for another work that you can do. We must try to live now in a world where our loved one is missing, or our job is gone, or our income is gone. In resisting this new norm, at first, many people want to maintain life as it was before a loss. We need to do adjustments after we have gotten to go through a loss. If you have lost a loved one, you adjust your life to living without them. If you have lost income, you adjust your life to living without that level of income. In time, through bits and pieces of acceptance, however, we see that we cannot maintain the past intact. It has been forever changed, and we must readjust. We must learn to recognize roles, reassign them to others in case of a loved one that has gone. Finding acceptance may be just having more good days than bad ones. As we begin to live again and enjoy our life, we often feel that in doing so, we are betraying our loved one, or we are betraying the job that we had. We can never replace what has been lost. We can only adjust ourselves to live in the new norm. So these 5 stages of grief, they are very, very important. At first, you may feel the denial and the isolation, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. We